between the time when Asa-Punk left Atlanta and the rise in the cost of his apartment, he discovered a sword undreamed of. And unto this, we begin the video.
See, several years ago, I found a website online. It was about 8 years ago, I think. And it was, speaking of this sword I'd never heard of, a very unusual, even back in the day, type of sword used by German mercenaries in Sweden, essentially, from what the article says. Currently, if you Google the name of the sword, you'll find 3 websites. My original posting from Arma, a version of the site in Russian, and one in Swedish. The original site is no longer up, and I believe, as best as I can pronounce it, the sword is pronounced Kaninholmsabeln, which is translates as Rabbit Island Saber. Next, we have a copy of the post I put on the Armo website back in October 29th of 2011, speaking of the sword and how it very much resembled a Japanese katana, but was a European sword used by German mercenaries in Sweden. Continuing with what I wrote on the Armo website, I gave kind of a translation of Kaninholmsabeln as Rabbit Island Saber, and then a English translation of the original article, which I'm showing now. The translation I used Google Translate for, so it may not be that good. But if anyone wants to translate it themselves, here is the copy of the original text in Swedish. But I do not read or write Swedish. Moving on, we have the imagery from the original website containing the equipment carried by the mercenary, essentially a Langshanet. If that's the way you pronounce it, I don't know. And at the top we had this, a picture of the replica that whoever put up the original website had claimed was based on a sword found in Sweden, although it does state that the original hilt only contained the guard, so that the handle and pommel were reconstructed by a similar type of sword housed, I believe, in the Wallace collection in England, if I recall. However, I now think, as I did then, that the pommel on it may be wrong, although I was wrong about what kind of pommel I thought went there. Given it has a Katzbalger type guard on it, clearly, I had figured it would have a Katzbalger pommel. But as I researched further, I found out that is not the truth.
But wait, there's more. I've discovered more about this sword in recent years that I was very happy to find out about. So here we go.
A post from, I believe it was Sword Forum, contained this image from the 1500s, which depicts soldiers resting or dying after a battle, whatever. And here's the sword in the background that has the right guard. It seems to be a saber of sort with a slightly curved blade, but had this weird pipe-like pommel. But before that picture, I discovered 2 different versions. This is the second version I discovered of the Egg Dance from 1557 by Peter, whatever his last name is. This saber sits on the table. It has the same pipe-like pommel and a curved blade like a katana, the right guard. But if you note, the tip on it is slightly curved down instead of up. However, this was the first version of the Egg Dance painting I found from the same year, same artist. The sword being on the floor next to some shoes, so we can kind of get a perspective of its size, and it seems close to the size of a katana if you look at the shoes next to it and all. So I took the picture and kind of flipped it the right direction and lightened it up a bit so you can see it more. Now this sword, if you notice, has a fairly straight blade up until the end where it curves, unlike a katana which is curved throughout. However, some European saber, what we call sabers from the 1500s, did have blades that curved throughout. So it kind of resembles this Vietnamese sword with that kind of curved down pipe pommel a bit. But this one has a curve throughout, which is a little different, but similar design, just by note. But this sword came out recently. It's a katana by United Cutlery called the Hanshu Boshin Tactical Katana. It comes in this black version. The pommel, apart from the lanyard loop, and the blade and the handle work nicely. But where was I to get a guard that matched? Well, Topeka makes a cheap Katzbalger sword here. So a friend of mine bought me one on sale that I'm going to cannibalize for the guard. The guard is a little square like this. Not as round as a Katzbalger guard usually is, but it's a nice looking wrought iron guard. I think will go nice with the sword, since this is my plan for Christmas to make it. This is a Deltin Celtic sword that was made years ago. And the reason I bring this up is because this handle here, well, once I have this Katzbalger, which is not a good sword, I may do a review on it, I figured those handles look similar. And I was thinking, I only need the sword for the guard for what I'm doing. So what about the rest of the sword? Well, I decided I'd just take the guard off and make it look basically like this Celtic sword. So I won't totally just have to throw it away or anything. However, look at this. When we put the guard on the Hanshu Boshin katana sword, we get, look at that, essentially the sword I'm looking at. Now there on top is a copy of the website original. In the middle is a sword I'm going to be making with what I get for Christmas, and on the bottom there is the one from the Egg Dance. And on this one, I just did a better handle on it instead of that modern one. But you can see it's very close. Now, as far as the guard, most Katzbalger guards, like I said, are curved and rounded more like that. Some have inward curves, but usually it's an outward curve. However, I did find this one, at least, that is slightly more straight. It's still a little more curved than the one I am going to wind up using, but it does have the big bulbs at the end of the guard, and as you see, it's a little straighter on mine, a little less curved, but close enough, I think, that I will now have the ability to make a replica of the sword I've sought for 8 years, a mysterious saber used by German mercenaries in Sweden that I am calling the Kaninholmsabeln. Okay, I'm coming back from the dead here. So there you go, folks. A very rare type of saber that's the site said was used by German mercenaries in Sweden, and I don't know if it actually is called a Kaninholmsabeln. That's what the site calls it, but I don't know if that means that the saber was found on the Kaninholm in Sweden, which is a place, or if it was the proper name for it, because Katzbalger means catgunner. Maybe Rabbit Island was a joke to them somehow. The Holm is also referenced in Viking Holmgangr, the type of duel they fought, which means the title island where they'd go out to fight. So maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it's just where it was found. I could call it the Egg Dance Saber, but that's just referencing the picture it's found in, so that would be a modern term. I also said in there Cat's Sabel, cat saber, based on the cat's Balger and then saber. That's just kind of a word I made up. But I like Kaninholmsabeln best for the name of it. I think that sounds cool, and it's a fairly unique sword. Like I said, I don't have money to get a replica made personally and kind of make the blade more precisely European in design. But I think this katana is pretty close to them getting a tactical one. It has a 30-inch blade, which is a bit longer than many commercial katana, but closer to what it is. The article said it was a bastard type blade, and if you look at the picture from the Egg Dance referencing that shoe size next to it, it looks about the size of a katana. So I'm very happy that after 8 years, I'll finally have a pretty decent replica of a sword that most people don't even know exists. Hilson, and good night.